Listen to 2-hour AI chat review of 2-hour podcast interview of Peter Duke, who rules the world, and the secret meaning behind Doge. Summary. This plain podcast interview features Peter Duke, discussing his research into power structures and global events. Duke recounts his career in technology and photography, leading to his current focus on exposing manipulative narratives through linguistic analysis. He explores the historical use of symbols like the Phrygian cap and the concept of epistemological warfare, arguing that powerful groups control narratives to maintain their dominance. The interview also touches on figures like Elon Musk and the implications of cryptocurrency, ultimately suggesting that critical thinking is key to resisting manipulation. Duke promotes his website and Substack as resources for further information. Dogecoin, Digital ID, and the Rise of the Doge, an 8-question FAQ. 1. What is the significance of the Doge meme and Dogecoin in relation to Elon Musk and potential power structures? The Doge meme, featuring a Shiba Inu dog, and the subsequent creation of Dogecoin, a cryptocurrency initially intended as a joke, are significant due to Elon Musk's involvement. While Dogecoin was seemingly a light-hearted endeavor, Musk's endorsement propelled its value, leading to accusations of a pump-and-dump scheme. This raises concerns about Musk's potential role within emerging power structures, particularly given his advocacy for a Department of Government efficiency and his interest in technology like Doge. 2. How does the historical concept of the Doge of Venice connect to contemporary discussions of technological control and societal governance? The Doge of Venice was the elected ruler of the Venetian Republic, a powerful maritime empire that thrived for centuries. Notably, the Doge wore a distinctive hat called the corno ducale, symbolizing republican liberty granted by a higher authority. This concept of liberty within limits contrasts with the notion of inalienable rights bestowed by a divine power. The symbolism of the Doge and the corno ducale resonates with contemporary concerns about technocratic control, where freedom is seemingly granted by technological systems and those who govern them. 3. Is there evidence to suggest a historical lineage connecting ancient symbolism, like the Phrygian cap, to modern institutions and power dynamics? The Phrygian cap, a soft, conical cap often associated with freedom and liberation, has a long and complex history. Its presence in ancient Roman and Greek iconography, particularly its association with freed slaves and the god Mithras, suggests a connection between freedom, power, and mystery cults. Interestingly, the Phrygian cap appears in numerous modern symbols, including the logos of the United States Senate, Army, and several state flags. This raises questions about the potential continuity of ancient power structures and their influence on modern institutions. 4. What is the meaning of epistemological warfare and how does it relate to controlling narratives and manipulating public perception? Epistemological warfare refers to the manipulation of knowledge and information to influence beliefs and control narratives. It involves shaping what people believe to be true, often through controlling language, media, and education. This can be achieved by reframing arguments, using loaded language, and suppressing dissenting voices. Examples of epistemological warfare include propaganda, censorship, and the creation of false narratives to manipulate public perception. 5. Is there a connection between historical geopolitical strategies, like the concept of the heartland proposed by Halford Mackinder, and modern global conflicts and power struggles? Halford Mackinder, a British geographer, proposed the heartland theory, arguing that control of the Eurasian landmass, particularly the resource-rich region of Russia, was key to global domination. This theory has influenced geopolitical strategies throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine can be seen as a manifestation of this power struggle, with Russia seeking to assert its control over the heartland while Western powers attempt to contain its influence. 6. What are the potential dangers of the Great Reset agenda, specifically regarding digital identity systems, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and the erosion of individual liberties? The Great Reset agenda, as envisioned by proponents like the World Economic Forum, raises concerns about the potential for increased technocratic control and the erosion of individual liberties. Initiatives like digital identity systems, CBDCs, and social credit systems could enable unprecedented surveillance and control over individuals' financial transactions and social interactions. These systems could be used to censor dissent, restrict freedom of movement, and enforce compliance with government mandates. 7. Is there a possibility that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are part of a larger strategy to usher in a new system of financial control, or are they a genuine challenge to the existing financial order? The role of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in the evolving global financial system is complex and contested. Some argue that Bitcoin, despite its decentralized nature, could be co-opted by existing power structures and integrated into a new system of financial control. Others believe that Bitcoin represents a genuine challenge to the existing financial order, offering an alternative to centralized banking systems and fiat currencies. The future of Bitcoin and its impact on the financial landscape remains uncertain. 8. What practical steps can individuals take to resist the encroachment of technocratic control and preserve their autonomy in an increasingly digital world? Individuals can take several steps to resist technocratic control and preserve their autonomy. Develop critical thinking skills, Learn to recognize and challenge manipulative narratives, propaganda, and biased information. Cultivate media literacy, be discerning about the sources of information you consume and develop the ability to critically evaluate different perspectives. Support independent media and alternative voices, seek out and support platforms that offer diverse viewpoints and challenge mainstream narratives. Protect your privacy, take steps to safeguard your personal data, limit your online footprint, and resist the adoption of intrusive technologies. Build community and connect with like-minded individuals, engage in open dialogue, share knowledge, and support each other in resisting technocratic control. Promote decentralized technologies and alternative systems, explore and support decentralized technologies and systems that empower individuals and communities. Embrace self-reliance and develop practical skills, cultivate skills that foster self-sufficiency and reduce dependence on centralized systems. By engaging in these actions, individuals can contribute to a more resilient and autonomous society that resists the encroachment of technocratic control and preserves individual liberty. Deciphering the Doge, Power, Control, and the Future of Freedom. Source: Plain podcast interview of Peter Duke, Who Rules the World and the Secret Meaning Behind Doge. Introduction and background. Brief introduction to Peter Duke, including his diverse background in computer science, photography, and tech, as well as his experience with various powerful figures like Bill Gates and Rupert Murdoch. This section highlights Duke's unique journey towards understanding power dynamics and manipulation tactics. 2. Epistemological warfare and linguistic control. Exploration of the concept of epistemological warfare, the deliberate framing of knowledge and language to manipulate societal beliefs. Duke emphasizes how this tactic, rooted in the work of figures like Leo Strauss and Marshall McLuhan, shapes our understanding of good versus evil and hinders critical thinking. He introduces the cause-effect complex equivalency as a key linguistic pattern used in this type of manipulation. 3. Who rules the world? The oligarchy and their methods. Duke identifies the ruling class as an oligarchy, utilizing epistemological warfare, usury, debt-based money, and hidden ownership structures to maintain control. He argues that focusing on billionaires obscures the existence of even wealthier individuals who operate invisibly. 4. Cultocracy, family ties, and made men. Introduces the concept of cultocracy, highlighting the role of family connections within the ruling class. Duke argues that figures like Elon Musk are made men, strategically positioned and financed by the oligarchy. He emphasizes the importance of family ties in maintaining power and control within the system. The Doge of Venice and the symbolism of the Phrygian cap. Deep dive into the history and symbolism of the Doge, the ruler of Venice, and his distinctive hat, the corona decali. Duke links this hat to the Phrygian cap, an ancient symbol of liberty, but argues that this liberty is granted by the ruling class, contrasting it with the concept of natural rights bestowed by God. 6. The Phrygian cap, a global symbol of controlled liberty. Extensive exploration of the Phrygian cap's presence in various historical and contemporary contexts, from ancient Rome and Mithraism to the United States Senate, national flags, and revolutionary movements. Duke suggests that the cap's ubiquity points to a long-standing system of controlled liberty, where freedom is granted and regulated by the powerful. 7. Halford Mackinder, Thalassocracy and the Geopolitics of Control. Introduction to the work of Halford Mackinder, a British geographer who emphasized the strategic importance of controlling the Eurasian heartland. Duke explains how this geopolitical perspective led to the development of a thalassocracy, an empire built on control of the seas, and how this system seeks to prevent the connectivity of land-based trade routes, particularly between Eurasia and Africa. 8. BRICS, the Great Reset, and the Illusion of Change. Duke argues that BRICS, the economic bloc of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is another tool of the oligarchy, promoting the same globalist agenda as organizations like the World Economic Forum. He connects this to the Great Reset, suggesting that it's a deceptive attempt to maintain control while appearing to offer change. 9. The algorithmic ghetto, digital IDs, deplatforming, and the erosion of freedom. Duke delves into the dangers of the emerging algorithmic ghetto, characterized by digital IDs, social credit systems, and the weaponization of deplatforming, drawing on his own experience of being banned by PayPal. He highlights the UN's push for global digital ID-linked bank accounts, emphasizing the threat this poses to individual freedom and financial independence. X. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the future of financial control. Examination of the role of cryptocurrency, particularly Bitcoin, in the oligarchy's plans. Duke shares his experience with creating the first cryptocurrency, the Hollywood dollar, and discusses his view of Bitcoin as a potentially manipulated tool within their portfolio of control strategies. He raises questions about Bitcoin's future, whether it will be integrated into a global CBDC system or ultimately discarded. 11. Resistance through critical thinking and the power of logos. Duke concludes by advocating for individual resistance through critical thinking, using the identification of cause-effect complex equivalency as a key skill. He believes this aligns with the teachings of Jesus, emphasizing the power of logos, or reasoned communication, to counter the oligarchy's manipulation. 12. The nuclear question and the specter of World War III. Discussion on the potential for World War III and the validity of nuclear weapons, with Duke suggesting that nukes may be a fabricated threat used to maintain fear and control. He argues that the oligarchy benefits from conflict and chaos, particularly in strategically important regions like Ukraine and the Middle East, but will only pursue large-scale war if it serves their ultimate objectives. 13. Max Keiser, Bitcoin, and the religion of crypto. Duke shares his perspective on Max Keiser, a prominent Bitcoin advocate, acknowledging his early involvement in cryptocurrency but questioning his unwavering faith in Bitcoin. He suggests that Bitcoin may be functioning as a kind of religion, dependent on widespread belief for its value and ultimately serving the interests of the ruling class. 14. Final thoughts, rejecting the narrative and reclaiming our power. Duke reiterates the importance of critical thinking and challenging the narratives presented by the ruling class. He encourages listeners to question everything, recognize manipulation tactics, and reclaim their individual sovereignty by thinking for themselves and engaging in open, reasoned dialogue. AI question and answers. What overarching power structures shape global events? Shaping global events. According to Peter Duke, oligarchs, or the cultocracy shape global events, using various methods such as epistemological warfare, usury, and a monopoly on violence. Epistemological warfare involves controlling language and knowledge to influence societal beliefs. This can include using propaganda and controlling the narrative. Usury refers to using debt-based money systems to control finances. A prime example is the Federal Reserve, which Duke argues should be abolished rather than merely audited. A monopoly on violence ensures the oligarchy can enforce its will. This can manifest through military power or control over law enforcement agencies not specified in sources. Duke emphasizes that this cultocracy comprises various factions, such as Zionists, Jesuits, Masons, and Saudi elites, all interconnected through their shared pursuit of power and wealth. He also highlights the role of family in perpetuating these power structures, noting that many powerful figures are made men who have been groomed and supported by the oligarchy. The role of history and symbolism. Duke's analysis emphasizes the importance of historical context and symbolism in understanding the oligarchy's methods. He argues that the same group of families has controlled the world for centuries, citing C. Wright Mill's book The Power Elite, which traces the lineage of wealthy families in the United States back to the 18th century. He analyzes the historical use of the Phrygian cap, a symbol of liberty often associated with revolutions and republics. Duke argues that the symbol represents a perverted form of liberty granted by the oligarchy, rather than the inalienable rights bestowed by God. Contemporary manifestations. Duke believes the oligarchy's agenda manifests in modern events and initiatives, including BRICS. Duke sees BRICS as a SIOP designed to push the world toward a technocratic world government. He notes that BRICS leaders use the same language and promote the same policies as organizations like the UN and WEF. Department of Government Efficiency. Duke draws parallels between Elon Musk's promotion of a Department of Government Efficiency and historical attempts to centralize power through the administrative state. He connects this initiative to the concept of a Doge, a historical title held by the rulers of the Venetian Republic, an oligarchy that used a facade of democracy to mask its true power. CBDCs and the Great Reset. Duke expresses concerns about the rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and the Great Reset agenda, seeing them as tools for implementing a digital ID gulag and a cashless society where citizens are under constant surveillance and control. The way forward. Duke believes the key to countering the oligarchy's agenda lies in critical thinking and reclaiming individual sovereignty. He advocates for recognizing the cause-effect complex equivalency. This is a linguistic pattern used to manipulate people's thinking by presenting a simplistic if this, then that explanation for complex issues. Engaging in logos. Duke interprets logos as critical thinking and communication, emphasizing the importance of having open and honest conversations about the issues facing humanity. Rejecting the left-right paradigm. Duke believes the political left and right are both controlled by the oligarchy and advocates for a rejection of this false dichotomy in favor of individual critical thinking. It's important to note that Duke's perspective on nuclear weapons is presented as a hypothesis. He questions their existence, suggesting they may be an elaborate hoax perpetrated by the oligarchy to maintain control. However, he acknowledges that nuclear explosions may have occurred, suggesting alternative explanations involving powerful conventional explosives. While Duke expresses strong opinions about certain individuals and organizations, it's important to approach these claims with a discerning eye and consider them within the context of his overall analysis. How is language manipulated to control populations' beliefs? The manipulation of language, a tool for epistemological warfare. Language can be manipulated to control populations' beliefs through a technique called epistemological warfare. This involves changing the meaning of words and framing information in specific ways to influence societal beliefs and thinking. One prominent example is the cause-effect complex equivalency, also known as the if-then-equals-because pattern. This pattern presents information in a way that short-circuits critical thinking by suggesting that if something happens, it must be because of a specific cause. This often leads people to accept information without questioning its validity. For example, stating that someone is alt-right simply because they took a photo with a certain individual is a form of complex equivalency. This connection attempts to frame the individual as holding certain beliefs without actual evidence. Similarly, labeling someone as a globalist based on their past employment or associating them with a specific political ideology due to their interviews with individuals of certain nationalities are further examples of this manipulative tactic. This control of language extends to the very definition of words. The word liberty, for instance, is often misunderstood. While many associate it with absolute freedom, its true meaning is freedom within limits, with those limits set by a higher power. This subtle shift in meaning frames liberty as something granted by the ruling class rather than an inherent right. The use of symbols, such as the Phrygian cap, also plays a role in this manipulation. While often presented as a symbol of liberty, its historical context reveals a different meaning. The Phrygian cap was given to slaves upon manumission, signifying the granting of freedom by the state. This reinforces the idea that liberty is bestowed by those in power, contradicting the concept of natural rights. By controlling the language and symbols used to discuss concepts like liberty and freedom, those in power can shape public perception and maintain their control over society. What are the long-term goals of global power brokers? Global power brokers and their goals. The sources discuss the goals of global power brokers from the perspective of Peter Doge, a former computer science major and photographer who has transitioned to researching and writing about media manipulation and global power structures. Doge suggests that the long-term goals of global power brokers, including wealthy families and intelligence agencies, are centered on maintaining control through a combination of financial dominance, epistemological warfare, and if necessary, a monopoly on violence. Here is a more in-depth look at these goals, as discussed in the sources. Control through finance. The sources posit that global power brokers utilize debt-based money systems to maintain control. This system is exemplified by institutions like the Federal Reserve, which, according to Doge, perpetuates a system of usury that benefits those at the top. He argues that the goal is not to audit or reform such institutions, but to eliminate them entirely in favor of credit-based systems. Control through epistemological warfare. Doge emphasizes the significance of epistemological warfare, which involves manipulating language and knowledge to shape public perception and behavior. He highlights the cause-effect complex equivalency pattern, a rhetorical technique used to establish false connections and manipulate critical thinking. Control through monopoly on violence. Doge suggests that while global power brokers prioritize control through finance and epistemological warfare, they are also willing to resort to violence when necessary. He cites historical examples like the business plot of 1933, where wealthy individuals allegedly attempted to install a dictator in the United States. He argues that contemporary events, such as the conflict in Ukraine, could be orchestrated to maintain global control by sowing chaos in strategically important regions. Doge contends that the ultimate goal of these strategies is to maintain a system of global governance controlled by a select few. He posits that initiatives like BRICS, while presented as alternatives to the existing world order, are ultimately part of the same agenda. According to Doge, the path to countering these strategies lies in reclaiming individual sovereignty through critical thinking and rejecting the manipulative narratives propagated by those in power. He encourages individuals to recognize and challenge manipulative language patterns, such as the cause-effect complex equivalency. From the source material lists 60 takeaway key points with a brief explanation supporting each of the key point. 60 key takeaways from Peter Doge's interview on geopolitics and empire. This list presents 60 key takeaways from Peter Doge's interview on the Plane podcast, focusing on his insights into global power structures, their methods, and potential counter-strategies. Doge's background and perspective. 1. Doge's background is diverse. Doge holds a background in computer science, photography, and creative direction in technology. He worked for prominent companies like News Corp, Sega GameWorks, and Virgin Point 2. Doge's transition to research. Doge's interest in politics and media manipulation stemmed from his observation that individuals aligned with his viewpoints were being unfairly portrayed in the media. Point 3. The alt-right label. Doge was labeled as alt-right by media outlets, despite his lack of familiarity with the term and his attempts to clarify his beliefs. Point 4. Encounter with Chuck Johnson. Doge's collaboration with Chuck Johnson, a controversial figure with alleged ties to intelligence agencies, provided him with insights into how news is manufactured and manipulated. Point 5. Experiences with deplatforming. Doge faced deplatforming from payment processors like PayPal and Stripe, highlighting the control exerted by financial institutions over online discourse. Point 6. Personal connections with powerful figures. Doge has had interactions with individuals like Rupert Murdoch, Steven Spielberg, Bill Gates, and Richard Branson, providing him with first-hand observations of how power operates. The nature of global power. 7. Oligarchs rule the world. Doge argues that global events are shaped by a powerful group of individuals he refers to as oligarchs or the cultocracy. Point 8. Historical continuity of power. Doge believes the same families have controlled the world for centuries, citing C. Wright Mill's book The Power Elite to support this claim. 9. The cultocracy. Duke views the global power structure as a cultocracy, a network of interconnected factions such as Zionists, Jesuits, Masons, and Saudi elites. 10. Family as a key factor. Duke emphasizes that family connections are crucial for maintaining and transferring power within the oligarchy. He uses the term made men to describe individuals groomed and supported by the oligarchy. 11. Control through money, ideology, compromise, and ego. Duke identifies these four elements as the primary tools used by the oligarchy to maintain control. 12. Shell companies hide wealth. Duke argues that the true extent of oligarchic wealth is hidden through shell companies, making it difficult to identify the wealthiest individuals. Epistemological warfare and linguistic manipulation. 13. Epistemological warfare as a key tool. Duke stresses the importance of epistemological warfare, the manipulation of language and knowledge, as a means of controlling populations. 14. Framing through good guys versus bad guys. Duke argues that the media perpetuates a simplistic good guys versus bad guys narrative, which inhibits critical thinking and encourages viewers to align with predetermined sides. 15. The cause-effect complex equivalency. Duke identifies this linguistic pattern, also known as if then equals because, as a key tool for manipulating thinking by creating false causal connections. 16. The manipulation of the word liberty. Duke points out that the word liberty is often misused to suggest absolute freedom when its true meaning is freedom within limits, with those limits set by those in power. 17. The Phrygian cap as a symbol of controlled liberty. Duke analyzes the historical use of the Phrygian cap, arguing that it represents a form of liberty granted by the ruling class, as opposed to natural rights. 18. Active listening as a defense. Duke advocates for active listening, which involves paying close attention to language patterns to identify attempts at manipulation. 19. Neurolinguistic programming, NLP. Duke draws from NLP principles to explain how language can be used to influence thoughts and behavior. 20. Sleight of mouth. Duke references Robert Dilts' concept of sleight of mouth, which describes techniques for reframing arguments to expose their weaknesses. The Venetian oligarchy and modern power structures. 21. The Venetian Republic as a model. Duke points to the historical Venetian Republic as an example of an oligarchy that successfully used a facade of democracy to mask its control. 22. The Doge as a figurehead. The Doge of Venice served as a symbolic leader, while true power resided with wealthy families who controlled the Republic. 23. The Corona Ducale. Duke analyzes the symbolism of the Corona Ducale, the Doge's hat, arguing that its incorporation of the Phrygian cap represents a form of controlled liberty granted by the oligarchy. 24. Elon Musk and the Doge theme. Duke connects Elon Musk's promotion of a Department of Government efficiency and his association with Dogecoin to the concept of the Doge and the Venetian oligarchy model. 25. Edward Mondale House and the administrative state. Duke draws parallels between Elon Musk's initiative and the ideas outlined in Edward Mondale House's book Philip Drew, Administrator, which advocated for using the administrative state to centralize power. 26. The business plot of 1933. Duke cites the business plot, an alleged attempt by wealthy individuals to install a dictator in the United States, as an example of the oligarchy's willingness to use violence to maintain control. Global strategies, thalassocracy, conflict, and the Great Reset. 27. Thalassocracy as a control strategy. Duke explains the concept of thalassocracy, control of the seas, as a historical strategy used by empires like the Phoenicians and the British to maintain global dominance. 28. Halford Mackinder and the World Island. Duke references Halford Mackinder's geopolitical theory, which emphasizes the strategic importance of controlling the world island, Eurasia and Africa, to maintain global power. 29. The Heartland and the Crescent. Duke explains Mackinder's concepts of the Heartland, Russia, and the Crescent, surrounding areas, and how controlling these regions is crucial for maintaining thalassocracy. 30. Preventing land-based connectivity. Duke argues that the oligarchy seeks to prevent the development of land-based infrastructure, such as railroads, that could connect Eurasia and Africa, as this would threaten their control of seaborne trade. 31. The strategic importance of Ukraine and the Middle East. Duke views conflicts in these regions as part of a strategy to maintain chaos and prevent the emergence of a land-based power that could challenge thalassocracy. 32. The Great Reset as a control mechanism. Duke sees the Great Reset agenda as a way to implement a technocratic world government, using tools like CBDCs, digital IDs, and social credit systems to control populations. 33. Algorithm ghetto. Duke uses the phrase algorithm ghetto to describe the potential dystopian future where individuals are trapped in a system of constant surveillance and control through digital technologies. 34. Deplatforming as a form of control. Duke emphasizes how deplatforming from financial institutions and online platforms serves as a tool to silence dissent and control the narrative. Questioning the nuclear narrative. 35. Duke questions the existence of thermonuclear weapons. Duke expresses skepticism about the existence of thermonuclear weapons, suggesting they may be an elaborate hoax designed to instill fear and control populations. 36. Nuclear weapons as a school play. Duke posits that the Cold War nuclear narrative may have been an elaborate act to maintain control, questioning whether nations would risk nuclear war if the weapons were real. 37. Alternative explanations for nuclear events. Duke suggests that events attributed to nuclear explosions, such as Hiroshima and Nagasaki, could have been caused by conventional explosives or other means. 38. The potential for dirty bombs. Duke acknowledges the possibility of explosions caused by dirty bombs, which could mimic the effects of nuclear weapons while not involving actual nuclear fission or fusion. 39. Skepticism of official narratives. Duke's questioning of the nuclear narrative highlights his overall skepticism towards official explanations and his willingness to consider alternative interpretations of historical events. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and the future of finance. 40. Max Kaiser's role in early cryptocurrency. Duke describes Max Kaiser's invention of the Hollywood dollar in 1997 as a precursor to modern cryptocurrencies. 41. Bitcoin as a potential tool for control. Duke acknowledges the possibility that Bitcoin, while initially decentralized, could be co-opted by the oligarchy to create a new system of financial control. 42. Hijacking Bitcoin. Duke references Roger Ver's claims that Bitcoin has been hijacked by powerful interests, raising questions about its future as a truly decentralized currency. 43. Portfolio strategy of the oligarchy. Duke believes the oligarchy employs a portfolio strategy with various financial technologies, including CBDCs, Bitcoin, stablecoins, and even gold, ultimately choosing the one that best serves their interests. 44. The manipulation of gold. Duke suggests that even gold, often seen as a safe haven asset, is subject to manipulation by powerful interests like the Rothschilds. Contesting oligarchic control, critical thinking and individual sovereignty. 45. Critical thinking as a key defense. Duke emphasizes the importance of critical thinking in recognizing and challenging the oligarchy's attempts to manipulate public perception. 46. Recognizing the cause-effect complex equivalency. Duke urges individuals to become aware of this linguistic pattern to avoid falling prey to manipulative narratives. 47. Rejecting the left-right paradigm. Duke believes that the political left and right are both controlled by the oligarchy and advocates for rejecting this false dichotomy. 48. Embracing logos. Duke interprets logos as critical thinking and communication, encouraging individuals to engage in open and honest conversations to challenge dominant narratives. 49. Reclaiming individual sovereignty. Duke believes that individuals must reclaim their sovereignty by taking control of their thinking and refusing to be manipulated by those in power. 50. Questioning official narratives. Duke encourages individuals to question official explanations and to consider alternative perspectives on historical and current events. 51. The importance of independent research. Duke emphasizes the need for independent research to challenge the narratives promoted by mainstream media and institutions. 52. The role of alternative media. Duke sees alternative media as a crucial platform for disseminating information that challenges dominant narratives and promotes critical thinking. Additional observations and insights. 53. Journalism as a tool for intelligence agencies. Duke suggests that journalism can be used as a recruitment ground for intelligence agencies, as it provides opportunities to gather information and influence public opinion. 54. The role of compromise operations. Duke believes that organizations like mystery cults and even seemingly opposing political ideologies are often used as compromise operations to control populations. 55. Signature reduction and signature increase. Duke explains these terms as ways to manipulate public perception of individuals or ideas, either downplaying their significance, reduction, or elevating their prominence, increase. 56. The importance of understanding culture. Duke defines culture as the values and processes of a society, arguing that controlling culture is essential for maintaining power. 57. The potential for a Mr. Robot event. Duke expresses concern about the possibility of a large-scale cyber attack that could cripple financial systems, which could then be blamed on foreign adversaries. 58. The need for self-reliance. Duke's emphasis on individual sovereignty suggests a need for self-reliance and a rejection of dependence on centralized systems. 59. The power of language. Duke's analysis highlights the immense power of language to shape perceptions, influence behavior, and ultimately control populations. 60. The role of faith. Although not explicitly stated, Duke's interpretation of logos and his referencing of Jesus suggest that faith and spirituality can play a role in countering the manipulative tactics of those in power. This comprehensive list provides a detailed overview of Peter Duke's perspective on global power structures, their methods, and potential ways to resist their control. It is important to note that these are Duke's interpretations and opinions, and further research and critical analysis are encouraged. Explain Duke's concept of epistemological warfare. Epistemological warfare, controlling knowledge to control people. Peter Duke describes epistemological warfare as a tactic used by those in power to shape and control society. It involves manipulating language, knowledge, and information to steer people towards specific beliefs and actions. Duke argues that epistemological warfare is a key tool used by the powerful to maintain their control over the world. Here are the core elements of Duke's concept of epistemological warfare. Controlling language. Duke emphasizes that changing the meaning of words can be a powerful tool in epistemological warfare. He cites E. Michael Jones' book Logos Rising to highlight the importance of understanding words in their original language, arguing that translations can obscure or distort meaning. This manipulation of language, according to Duke, can be used to shape values and beliefs. Cause-effect complex equivalency. Duke points to the cause-effect complex equivalency as a common pattern in epistemological warfare. This pattern, also known as the if-then-equals-because framework, short-circuits critical thinking by presenting information as a simple cause and effect relationship. This pattern is often used by politicians and the news media to manipulate public opinion. Recognizing and challenging this pattern, Duke argues, is crucial for developing critical thinking skills. Manufacturing myths. Duke believes that the media and those in power create myths to control the public. These myths often rely on the good guy/bad guy dichotomy, simplifying complex issues and discouraging nuanced analysis. He suggests that this framing is pervasive, impacting how people view everything from sporting events to political candidates. Controlling information. Duke argues that those in power control what information the public sees and how it is presented. He draws on his experience working with Chuck Johnson, claiming that they would often make things up that would then become widely accepted as news. He also contends that public key encryption, which is used to secure information online, likely has a backdoor accessible to intelligence agencies. This suggests that true privacy and security online may be illusory. Creating dialectics. Duke asserts that those in power often create artificial dialectics, opposing sides in a conflict, to advance their own agendas. He cites the Cold War, communism versus fascism, and the current tensions between Russia and the West as examples of manufactured conflicts. He believes these manufactured conflicts serve to distract the public and advance the interests of the ruling class. Individual sovereignty and critical thinking. Duke believes that the key to combating epistemological warfare lies in individual sovereignty and critical thinking. He encourages people to develop their critical thinking skills and challenge the information they are given, rather than passively accepting it. Duke's concept of epistemological warfare highlights the importance of being aware of the ways in which information can be manipulated and used to control people. He suggests that by developing critical thinking skills and understanding the tactics used in epistemological warfare, individuals can begin to reclaim their sovereignty and challenge the narratives of those in power. What is Duke's perspective on who runs the world? Those who control the narrative, control the world. Peter Duke believes that the world is run by a relatively small and interconnected group of powerful individuals who have maintained their influence for centuries, if not millennia. He refers to them as oligarchs, arguing that they employ a combination of strategies to retain their power and advance their agenda, including epistemological warfare, usury, and a monopoly on violence. Oligarchy through the ages. Duke sees this group of oligarchs as a consistent force throughout history, drawing parallels between those who held power during Jesus' time and those who hold power today. He supports this view by referencing C. Wright Mills's The Power Elite, which concluded that a significant majority of the wealthiest families in the U.S. in 1950 were descendants of the wealthiest families in 1850, suggesting a pattern of inherited wealth and influence across generations. Epistemological warfare. Duke believes that controlling the narrative, what people know and believe, is paramount for maintaining power. As discussed in our previous conversation, he views epistemological warfare as a key tool for shaping public perception and steering society in a desired direction. This manipulation of information includes controlling language, framing issues through a simplistic good guy/bad guy dichotomy, and disseminating manufactured myths and narratives through the media. Usury. Duke highlights the significance of debt-based money as a mechanism for control, arguing that central banking systems like the Federal Reserve perpetuate a system of usury that benefits those at the top. He emphasizes the need to move away from this system, advocating for the abolishment of the Federal Reserve rather than simply auditing it. Monopoly on violence. While not explicitly discussed in the provided source, Duke acknowledges the importance of controlling violence as a means of maintaining power. This point aligns with the broader understanding of how states and powerful entities throughout history have utilized their control over military and police forces to enforce their will. The Doge analogy. Duke employs the analogy of the Doge of Venice to illustrate his understanding of how this power structure operates. In the Venetian Republic, a council ostensibly represented the people, but their true purpose was to serve the interests of the powerful oligarchic families who held the real power behind the scenes. He sees this pattern repeating itself in contemporary society, pointing to individuals like Elon Musk as modern-day Doges who appear to be advocating for change but ultimately serve the agenda of the ruling class. Duke's perspective suggests that the individuals who appear to be in positions of power, politicians, billionaires, and media personalities, are often merely figureheads or made men serving a larger agenda. He believes that true power resides with a hidden network of oligarchic families who exert their influence through a sophisticated combination of financial control, narrative manipulation, and strategic use of force. Evaluate Duke's interpretation of the symbolism and historical significance of the Doge. The Doge as a symbol of controlled liberty. Peter Duke uses the symbolism of the Doge, the historical leader of the Venetian Republic, to represent his concept of controlled liberty. He argues that the Doge's distinctive hat, the corno ducale, is a visual representation of this idea, stemming from its connection to the Phrygian cap. The Doge, although the leader of the Republic, was ultimately subservient to the Venetian oligarchy, the wealthy families who held true power. This structure, Doge suggests, parallels how modern society operates, with the appearance of democratic processes masking the underlying control exerted by a powerful elite. The Phrygian cap, from freedom to controlled liberty. The Phrygian cap, a soft, conical cap with a forward-pointing peak, held different meanings throughout history. Doge traces its symbolism. Ancient Rome, the Phrygian cap symbolized freedom and was given to slaves upon manumission, granting them citizenship rights. Venice, the Doge, rather than wearing a crown, wore the Phrygian cap-inspired corno ducale, symbolizing the republican liberty granted to him by the oligarchy. French Revolution, the Phrygian cap became a key symbol of the French Revolution, representing liberty and the overthrow of monarchy. Doge highlights the irony in the Phrygian cap representing both true freedom and controlled liberty. He argues that the Venetian use of the Phrygian cap, as embodied in the Doge's hat, is key to understanding its modern significance. This version of liberty, Doge contends, is granted by the powerful, not inherent to the individual. This concept ties directly to Doge's broader argument about epistemological warfare, where those in power manipulate language and symbols to shape public perception and maintain control. Modern examples of the Phrygian cap. Doge points to numerous modern instances of the Phrygian cap, arguing they reinforce his point. Symbols of the United States, the Phrygian cap appears in the symbol of the U.S. Senate and on coins designed by Benjamin Franklin. Doge also notes its presence on the logos of several U.S. states. Latin American symbols, Doge observes that the Phrygian cap features prominently in the symbols of various Latin American nations, including Argentina, Cuba, and Nicaragua. Doge presents these examples as evidence that the symbolism of controlled liberty is deeply embedded in modern society, particularly in the United States and Latin America. He contends that the continued use of the Phrygian cap in these contexts points to the enduring influence of the Venetian model of oligarchic control disguised as republican freedom. Doge's interpretation, a call for critical analysis. Doge's interpretation of the Doge and the Phrygian cap encourages a critical examination of commonly accepted symbols and narratives. He suggests that the widespread use of the symbol should not be taken at face value, but rather analyzed within the context of power dynamics and the potential for manipulation. By understanding the historical shift in the meaning of the Phrygian cap, from true freedom to controlled liberty, Doge prompts us to question the nature of freedom in our own societies. He suggests that what we perceive as liberty might, in fact, be carefully managed and controlled by those in power, aligning with his broader concept of epistemological warfare. Transcript of AI Podcast, plain podcast interview of Peter Doge, who rules the world and the secret meaning behind Doge. Elon Musk's idea for a Department of Government efficiency sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Right? But what if I told you it has a surprising connection to the Doge of Venice? Interesting. Today, we're diving into an interview with Peter Doge. Okay. To uncover some historical patterns that might just change how you view power and freedom in the world. Alright. I'm intrigued. Our source for this deep dive is a transcript of Peter Doge's interview on the Geopolitics and Empire podcast. Watch it. Peter Doge is a tech entrepreneur turned photographer, really? Who describes himself as a Christian linguist. A Christian linguist. That's a new one. He's got some pretty bold claims about who's really pulling the strings in the world and how they've been doing it for centuries. Okay. Well, let's hear what he has to say. Doge's background is really fascinating. Yeah. He's worked with big names like Steven Spielberg and Rupert Murdoch. Wow. He's been around. And even dipped his toes into the early internet scene with Max Kaiser. So he's got a pretty diverse background. Yeah. He really does. And now he's a Christian linguist. He seems to be all over the place. Right? Yeah. And somewhere along the way, he picked up the nickname Annie Leibovitz of the alt-right. Oh, wow. Which he apparently finds pretty funny. I bet he does. That label actually points to a key concept in Doge's work, epistemological warfare. Epistemological warfare? Yeah. Yeah. That sounds intense. It is a fancy term, yet. But it basically means using language to manipulate people's perceptions and control the narrative. So like propaganda. It's similar, but think of it like a battle for your mind. Oh, okay. I get it. Who controls the information you see and hear, right? And how does that shape what you believe? So it's not just about what's being said because that, but also how it's being said to influence us. That's a big part of it. Interesting. And that's where Doge's interest in Christian linguistics comes in. Okay. He believes that by carefully analyzing language, especially the language used in the Bible, and by those in power, we can uncover hidden meanings and power dynamics. So he's like a detective using language as clues to solve a bigger mystery. Exactly. I like that. And one of the linguistic weapons Duke identifies, is something he calls cause-effect complex equivalency. Cause-effect complex equivalency. Or if then equals because. Oh, boy. That sounds complicated. It's actually simpler than it sounds. Okay. Good. Imagine someone says all women are bad drivers. That statement creates a false cause and effect relationship. Yeah. I see that. Applying that being a woman automatically makes you a bad driver. Right. That's obviously not true. Of course not. It's a generalization. Exactly. A pretty ridiculous one at that. Right. And Duke argues that many of the stories we're told about the world, especially in politics and the media yet, rely on these kinds of shaky logical foundations. So it's like creating a shortcut in our thinking, yes. That leads to a faulty conclusion. Precisely. So how do we fight back against this epistemological warfare? That's the big question, isn't it? How do we learn to spot these misleading arguments? Duke says a simple question can help dismantle these false narratives. Oh, what's that? All of them. All of them. Yep. I'm not sure I follow. In our bad driver example, if someone claims that all women are bad drivers, right? Simply asking all of them forces them to confront the absurdity of their generalization. Ah, I get it. It makes them think twice. Yeah. Kinda throws their argument back in their face. Exactly. It encourages critical thinking. It does. And makes you realize that things are rarely so black and white. You got it? I like that. So who does Duke believe is behind all this manipulation? Yeah. Who are these powerful forces shaping the narrative? Duke believes that the same small group of ultra-wealthy families that held power in Jesus' time, are still in control today. He's going way back. He is. Right? So who are these families? Does he name names? He points to historical examples like the Venetian Republic. The Venetian Republic. On the surface, Venice looked like a democracy. Yeah. But in reality, it was controlled by a powerful elite headed by the Doge. So it was all a facade. That's what Duke suggests. It's residential, and he points to some startling research by sociologist C. Wright Mills to back up this claim. Point Wright Mills. Okay. Mills found that a whopping 80% of the wealthiest families in America in 1950 were related to the wealthiest families in 1850. Wow. That's incredible. It really is, isn't it? So the idea that anyone can rise to the top if they work hard enough is basically a myth. It certainly challenges that notion. He does. It suggests that wealth and power are often passed down through generations, yet within a select few families, rather than being earned through merit. That's a pretty sobering thought. It is. And this is where Duke makes a pretty bold connection, I bet. He does. Lay it on me. He believes that Elon Musk, of all people, is a modern-day Doge. Elon Musk. A Doge. He compares Musk's idea for a department of government efficiency to the role of the Doge in Venice. I can see where he's going with this. He suggests that both are essentially figureheads for a hidden elite, right? Maintaining the illusion of popular control while actually serving the interests of the powerful few. So Musk is just a puppet. Duke even uses the Dogecoin phenomenon as evidence for this theory. Dogecoin, I'm listening. He argues that it was a carefully orchestrated pump and dump scheme, designed to benefit those in the know, with Musk as the charismatic front man. So he's saying that Musk is using his image and influence to manipulate the market. That's his argument. Just like the Doge might have done back in the day. That's what he's suggesting. This is getting interesting. He even points to some interesting visual evidence. Like what? Have you ever noticed the striking similarities between the hats worn by Elon Musk and the Doge of Venice? Now that you mentioned it, yet, they do look kinda similar. What's the deal with those hats anyway? Well, that seemingly harmless piece of headwear called the Phrygian cap actually has a long and fascinating history tied to the concepts of freedom and control. Freedom and control. You wouldn't think a simple hat could be so loaded with meaning, would you? I guess not. But it is. This is getting good. It really is. It's a simple cap, but it carries a lot of symbolic weight. Back in ancient Rome, the Phrygian cap was given to slaves when they were freed. It became a symbol of their granted liberty. So it's like a badge of freedom. Exactly. Yeah. But Duke points out a crucial distinction. This was liberty granted by the state, not an inherent natural right. It represents a kind of controlled freedom where your rights are given to you by those in power rather than being something you inherently possess. That's a subtle but important difference. It makes you wonder if true freedom can ever be granted by someone else or if it has to come from within. That's a deep question and one that Doge encourages us to contemplate. What's even more fascinating is how the symbol of granted liberty has popped up throughout history. We see it in ancient Rome, of course, but also in the mystery cult of Mithraism, the French Revolution, and even in American symbolism. Wait. Really? The Freudian cap is used in American symbolism. I never noticed that. It's more common than you might think. It appears on coins, state logos, and even the US Senate seal. Hold on. The Senate seal. The one with the eagle and the arrows features the Freudian cap. It does. And it's placed right next to fascist symbols like the fasces, which is a bundle of rods symbolizing strength through unity. That's quite the juxtaposition. It makes you question what freedom really means in that context. This idea of controlled freedom ties directly into Doge's analysis of modern geopolitics. He brings up Halford Mackinder's heartland theory, which basically argues that controlling the Eurasian landmass, the heartland of the world, is key to global domination. So whoever controls that massive chunk of land has the power to control the world. That's the basic idea. Mackinder also introduced the concept of a thalassocracy, which is an empire based on controlling the seas. Think of ancient Athens or the British Empire. So the heartland theory is about land power and thalassocracy is about sea power. I'm starting to see the connection here. Exactly. And Doge uses Mackinder's ideas to make sense of what's happening in the world today. He even uses a visual of Mackinder's map to explain the current conflict in Ukraine. So how does Ukraine fit into all of this? Well, if you look at the map, Ukraine sits right at the western edge of the Eurasian heartland. It's like a bridge between Europe and Asia. So controlling Ukraine would be strategically important for anyone trying to dominate that heartland region. Precisely. And Doge suggests that this conflict might be more about controlling land-based trade routes than it is about ideology or national sovereignty. This all ties back to the idea of epistemological warfare that we talked about earlier, doesn't it? Are we being told the whole story about what's happening in Ukraine, or is there a deeper power struggle going on behind the scenes? That's a great question and one that Doge wants us to consider. He argues that we need to look beyond the surface-level narratives and examine the underlying geopolitical forces at play. This whole discussion about trade routes makes me think of something. If controlling land-based trade routes is so important, why are there no railroads connecting North and South America? That is a fascinating observation. Why haven't we connected the Americas by rail? Is it just a matter of logistics, or is there something else going on? Doge seems to think it's the latter. He suggests that it might be a deliberate strategy by the thalassocracy, the powers that control the seas, to maintain their grip on global trade. That's a pretty bold theory. It challenges our assumptions about infrastructure and development. It really does. And it leads us to Doge's take on the future. He's pretty skeptical about the so-called Great Reset central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and the push for a cashless society. He sees these trends as potentially dangerous, especially when combined with advances in artificial intelligence and surveillance technology. He's particularly wary of Bitcoin. He suggests that it might be a controlled project designed to usher in a new era of financial surveillance and control. That's certainly a controversial viewpoint. While some see Bitcoin as a way to decentralize power and break free from the traditional financial system, Doge sees it as a potential tool of control in the wrong hands. He even has a rather alarming theory about backdoors and public key encryption. That's the technology that's supposed to secure our online transactions. Right? Exactly. It's the backbone of online security. And if Doge's sources are right, our financial data and online communications might be far more vulnerable than we realize. That's a chilling thought. It would mean that our digital lives are essentially an open book to anyone with the right access. It raises serious concerns about privacy and security in an increasingly digital world. If there are indeed backdoors in encryption, it could have major implications for everything from financial control to the potential for cyber attacks. So given all these potential threats, what can we do? How do we protect ourselves in a world that seems increasingly controlled and manipulated? Well, Doge believes the most powerful weapons we have are individual sovereignty and critical thinking. He urges us to question everything we're told, especially those narratives that rely on the if-then equals because pattern we discussed earlier. So it's about becoming more aware of how language is being used to influence our thoughts and behaviors. We need to learn to spot those manipulative patterns and challenge them. Exactly. Yeah. So Doge is giving us a decoder ring to understand the hidden language of power. And it's not just about analyzing what politicians and media figures are saying. It's about examining all the messages we encounter in our daily lives. Right. Think about the marketing slogans you see. The social media posts you scroll through, the news headlines that grab your attention. They're all carefully crafted to influence you in some way. You're right. Once you start to see the world through this lens, it's hard to unsee it. It's both empowering and a little unsettling. It is. But Duke reminds us that we have the power to choose what we believe. We don't have to passively accept the narratives that are presented to us. We can question them, challenge them, and ultimately reclaim our individual sovereignty. That brings us to Duke's most provocative thought. The one that really pushes the boundaries of conventional thinking. He actually suggests that questioning the very existence of thermonuclear weapons is a valid exercise in critical thinking. That's certainly a bold statement. He argues that the threat of nuclear war might be a carefully constructed illusion designed to keep the population in a state of fear and control. So he's suggesting that the idea of mutually assured destruction, the idea that no one would ever use these weapons because it would lead to global annihilation, might be a form of mass manipulation. That's what he's proposing. Now we're not endorsing any particular viewpoint here, but it's definitely a question worth pondering. What if the fear of nuclear war has been used to justify massive military spending, geopolitical maneuvering, and the erosion of civil liberties? It's a chilling thought, but it does make you wonder if we blindly accepted the narrative of nuclear weapons without truly examining the evidence. If we don't question these narratives, are we simply playing into the hands of those who benefit from them? Duke encourages us to do our own research, to examine the evidence and to come to our own conclusions. He reminds us that true critical thinking involves questioning even the most deeply ingrained assumptions. Well, this deep dive into Peter Duke's interview has certainly given us a lot to think about. We've uncovered hidden meanings in language and symbols, explored the history of oligarchic control, delved into the intricacies of geopolitics, and even questioned the very foundations of our geopolitical reality. It's been quite a journey. It has. And it highlights how important it is to be active, engaged thinkers, constantly questioning what we're told and seeking deeper understanding. Exactly. Peter Duke reminds us that knowledge is power, but only when we use it to challenge the status quo and reclaim our individual sovereignty. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have one final question for you, the listener. What surprised you the most about what you heard today? What will you be researching further? What narratives will you be questioning in your own life? Let us know on social media. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.